Welcome. In this particular video, we'll be finding reciprocal trigonometric ratios of any angles using degrees. Let's take a look at example 1. Find the value of the indicated function for the specified angle, cosecant of theta, when theta happens to be 810 degrees. So let's go ahead and write it down. In this case, we have cosecant of 810 degrees as our objective. However, we do know that this is the same as 1 over sine of 810 degrees. Now, let's go ahead and focus on sine of 810 degrees. So sine of 810 degrees is our new objective for now. Since 810 degrees is not an angle on the unit circle, we're going to find a smaller coterminal angle. So we can say that this is the same as sine of 810 degrees minus a whole revolution of 360 degrees. And this happens to be sine of 450 degrees. However, 450 degrees is not the measure of an angle on the unit circle, so let's find a smaller coterminal angle and let's take sine of that angle. So this is the same as sine of 450 degrees minus 360 degrees. And this happens to be the same as sine of 90 degrees. Now, 90 degrees is in fact an angle on the unit circle, precisely here. Let's recall then that x is equal to cosine of theta on the unit circle, and also that y is equal to sine of theta on the unit circle. Since we're looking for sine, we're going to get the y value for that particular angle. So in this case, for the 90-degree angle, we have that our y value happens to be 1. Therefore, this implies that sine of 90 degrees is equal to 1. And this now would actually help us in finding what is cosecant of 810 degrees, since that was equal to 1 over sine of 810 degrees, which we figure out to be 1. So this is 1 over 1, which is 1. And by the transitive property of equality, we get that cosecant of 810 degrees is equal to 1. So let's see a couple more examples. Example 2. Find the value of the indicated function for the specified angle. In this case, we're looking for secant of theta, where theta happens to be negative 810 degrees. So we want secant of negative 810 degrees. Now, secant happens to be the reciprocal function for cosine. So this is 1 over cosine of negative 810 degrees. So let's focus our attention on finding out what is cosine of negative 810 degrees. So cosine of negative 810 degrees should be equal to the cosine of a coterminal angle. So let's find cosine of 360 degrees minus 810 degrees. And this is equal to cosine of negative 450 degrees. Now, we're going to find another coterminal angle here by doing the following. Cosine of 360 degrees minus 450 degrees. So that will give us cosine of negative 90 degrees, which is still not an angle on the unit circle. So let's keep going here, and we can say that this is cosine of 360 degrees minus 90 degrees, and that gives us cosine of 270 degrees. Now let's recall that x is equal to cosine of theta on the unit circle, and that y is equal to sine of theta on the unit circle. Since we're dealing with cosine, we are going to look for the x coordinate for the angle whose measure is 270 degrees. So coming over here, we're going to get the x coordinate. In this case, our x coordinate happens to be 0. So secant of negative 810 degrees is equal to 1 over cosine of negative 810 degrees, but this cosine, we just found it to be 0. So this is 1 over 0, which means that this is undefined because we cannot divide by 0. Okay, so therefore secant of negative 810 degrees is undefined. Now let's do one more example here. Example 3. Find the value of the indicated function for the specified angle. In this case, we want cotangent of theta, where theta happens to be negative 840 degrees. So we want cotangent of negative 840 degrees. Now cotangent is the reciprocal function of tangent, so this is 1 over tangent of negative 840 degrees. Well, let's focus our attention on just tangent for now. Let's figure out what is tangent of negative 840 degrees. Since negative 840 degrees is not an angle in the unit circle, let's find a coterminal angle. So we have tangent of 360 minus 840 degrees. And if we do the mathematics here, that's going to become tangent of negative 480 degrees. Now, negative 480 degrees is still not an angle in the unit circle. So let's get another coterminal angle. So this is the same as cotangent of 360 degrees minus 480 degrees. And this happens to be tangent of negative 120 degrees, which is still not an angle in there. So let's get the measure of a coterminal angle. So this is the same as tangent of 360 degrees minus 120 degrees. And that gives us tangent of 240 degrees. Now this is an angle on the unit circle. So tangent is the same as sine of 240 degrees divided by cosine of 240 degrees. Or in other words, your y value over your x value. So let's find the angle whose measure is 240 degrees. Now your y happens to be negative square root of 3 over 2 divided by your x, and your x value here happens to be negative 1/2. Now this is equivalent to saying that we have negative root 3 over 2 divided by negative 1/2. Or in other words, we can actually change it into the product by rewriting this as negative root 3 over 2 times the reciprocal of this, which is 2 over negative 1. The negatives cancel, the 2's cancel, and you get that this is a square root of 3. However, that's not our ultimate goal. We just found out that tangent of negative 840 degrees is equal to the square root of 3. However, our ultimate goal is to figure out what is cotangent of negative 840 degrees, which is 1 over tangent of negative 840 degrees. So this is 1 over square root of 3, but we don't want any square root in the denominator, so we need to rationalize it, and we do that by multiplying by 1 in the form square root of 3 over square root of 3. So that gives us 1 times square root of 3, which is square root of 3, over the square root of 3 times 3, which is square root of 9. So one can conclude that cotangent of negative 840 degrees is equal to the square root of 3 over square root of 9, which happens to be 3. And this particular example concludes this video on finding reciprocal trigonometric ratios of any angles when using degrees. So thank you for watching and have a wonderful day.